Today on Real Talk with Zeb, finally home, Sergeant Derrick Miller. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Before we get started, man, how are you physically and mentally doing right now?
Physically and mentally, it's still a little shock. Just finally being back home, being able to just have the freedom to walk around and do as I want to a little bit and spend time with my family. It's been a long time coming, so I'm still trying to get used to that. Physically, I'm still in good shape. I can go to the gym and kind of stay in my routine there, but yeah, everything else is kind of coming real fast.
Take me back to the day you got the news you were coming home. You have 24 hours to reflect. What were you thinking about during those 24 hours before you could reach out to anyone?
Oh man, so I called my mom, and it was still like a dream. You're looking at the paper and reading it over and over again and making sure you're reading the right words because they're finally telling you get to go home, you get to be with your family. So I called mom, and she started screaming on the phone, and I don't even think she was speaking English. And then I called my ex-wife and told the kids, and they were excited. And it still didn't seem real. It seemed like I was still living somebody else's dream, and then finally getting to walk out of there.
Reflecting back over the process, did you ever feel like God had abandoned you in the process?
No, absolutely not. If I looked at the situation that I was in, if I looked at all the people who were writing me letters, congressmen, senators, my mom going to bat for me, UAP picking up our case and helping provide a way for my family to come down and visit, our legal defense. There was too many blessings for me to believe that God had abandoned me at any point. And I knew that as long as I kept my faith, I would be fine. I lost hope a few times. That's for real. You're sitting in a concrete room, and everything's taken from you, everything's gone, and you're watching your kids grow up through pictures. But I never lost faith.
Where did your strength come from to make it day to day? Because during that time when you first went in, you had life.
I did.
In prison. So where did the strength come from to make it day to day?
Mostly from my mom. I watching her, take care of me and growing up, single mom, working 2-3 jobs and putting herself through college. She never quit. She never gave up. So I think just watching that, seeing how hard she worked, I took on that same, mentality, just to continue to strive and try to do better for my kids. And, that helped lead me through tougher times.
Now, take me back to the day before the incident took place in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. What was the atmosphere like around your platoon during that time?
It was a normal, combat infantry platoon, laughing and joking, making sure our weapons are, clean and ready to go. We had probably about 48 hours notice that we were going to be voluntold to go down and help recover the assets that the Afghan army soldiers had lost. So we knew what we were doing, but we were focused, but trying to keep things light so everybody doesn't get, down about what we had to do.
Now, prior to the incident, had you heard about conditions out in the field with the soldiers, and had you heard about the large number of soldiers being locked up for doing their job during hostile times in combat?
So we would see like snippets on CNN or Fox News as we eat in the chow hall, but overwhelmingly the soldiers don't particularly know about their surroundings. They don't really. Even at Leavenworth, some of the guards don't know, who or what people are there for. So, typically soldiers don't really know until they're stuck in that situation, how much peril they are in from just serving alone. Not talking about combat, but from being, prosecuted by the government and having a narrative pushed about you that you can't control.
Now, what did it feel like being locked up knowing you were an innocent man?
It's a tough situation because, I did take the life. I pulled the trigger, but I felt like my life and the life of my men were in danger, and that's why I shot. So the argument for me was always never, did I kill, an individual? It was never that. It was the circumstances surrounding it. And that always caused me to, try to take any situation that I was in, try to learn and grow from it, even if it's, the simplest thing. I'm here, I'm going through treatment. I might as well see if I can learn some tools that would better myself for the future. So I never looked at it as a detriment, just a temporary, status.
Now, how was your treatment in Leavenworth from the time you walked into prison to the time you walked out?
Treatment's an interesting thing. So what they do is they have a template, and it doesn't deviate very much. It's from like a Canadian mental facility or psychological evaluation from 1980. They haven't updated it. So they just kind of give you the script and you go down and they ask you certain questions, and you move forward through booklets. So it's very simple, but even with that, you try to learn, conflict resolution, how to deal with anger, how to process, different environments. So, you just take the simple stuff and try to apply it to your daily life. So treatment is an interesting environment. You get to hear about a lot of people's crimes, try to help them work through some of their issues, and they try to help you work through some of yours.
Yeah, because that was actually going to be my next question. What was your everyday life like in Leavenworth?
It's very regimented. So when you wake up, they tell you your doors pop. So everybody knows what time you wake up. You don't have to get up and go eat, but they have 3 meals scheduled, and if you don't eat, that's on you. Rec times are regimented, visitations regimented, lawyer calls, work call, everything is set on a pretty normal schedule. So there's not a whole lot of leeway for individuality, personal choice, but inside of those confines, you can find a little room to your own creativity, type of shoes you wear, who you choose to rec with, who you want to work out with. So even in that strict confines and order, we still trying to find a way to lighten things up and have a good time.
Now, one of the things that you don't get back is time. How do you deal with that?
That's a tricky balance. Is you want to try to make up and live and experience things that you missed, but at the same time you don't want to rush into stuff and get too far into things that you don't really understand. So I just try to take it one day at a time and enjoy today, especially spending time with my kids. Whatever it is they want to do. If they want to go color, they want to go to the mall, I'll just be there, just to be there to experience it with them. And I told my mom to, I don't want her to deviate her schedule, just try to accommodate me. I said, whatever you do is whatever you do, and I'll fit in, and I'll follow behind and enjoy spending time with you. So that's what I'm really trying to focus on.
Now, after going through the military court process, I don't know if you want to talk about it or not.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on the military court process?
That's a very complicated question. My thoughts, personally, is it's not a fair process at all. They've taken aspects of the federal court system and skewed them to benefit the military. For example, they use a 2/3 panel. You need 2/3 of the panel to be found not guilty. If you have one person in a federal trial who feels that you're not guilty, it's a hung jury, or you're found not guilty. You can go for a retrial, but typically, there's a chance for you to walk away. You need 2/3 of the jury who are selected by the military, by the general on post, by the convening authority, and when you appeal to the military again for them to overturn what they just did to you. And one of the most frustrating things is once you make it to the second level of appeals, if they don't choose not to hear your case, you have no right to the Supreme Court. Any person who walks across the border or comes here, legally or illegally, can file a petition for the Supreme Court, and if their case warrants it, they'll be heard. But service members, people who volunteer to give up their lives, if necessary, for this country, have the possibility of losing their right to file for the Supreme Court. And I watched it happen multiple times. John Hadley filed, I think, 3 writs with the Supreme Court there, and they would not hear it because simply CAF, the second level of military appeals, would not hear his case.
And for those that don't know, what is the conviction rate in military court?
The military conviction rate is like 98%, 97%.
Wow.
So if you go to a court martial, you're going to be found guilty of something.
Now, I got to ask you this one. If your daughters decided they wanted to follow in your footsteps and join one of the branches of the service, how would you feel about it, and what advice would you give them?
I would be apprehensive, but I would trust that their mother and I could instill in them the values to if they're going to serve, give it their all. There's plenty of benefits to being in the military, the camaraderie, the education, some of the veteran benefits. But there's also downfalls, and we've seen that. So hopefully they'll get both sides and be able to weigh it and figure out what direction they want to go with their lives. So I would be comfortable with it. I'd probably urge them to go to the Air Force, though.
The Air Force? Oh, yeah, my father was Air Force.
Yeah.
Now, prior to getting sentenced to life in Leavenworth, for people that don't know, man, what was your dreams, your hopes and dreams prior to that? And now that you are out, are any of your goals that you had back then, are they now achievable today?
So I really wanted to be in criminal justice. I wanted to be a police officer, and that's out the window now. I'm a felon, so I can no longer use that. I went to college for a short while for criminal justice, so those credit hours are pretty much gone. So now I'm kind of shifting my outlook. I want to get into real estate, and I'm going to take an electrician apprenticeship program and try to use those funds and to get into real estate. But my goals had already shifted when I first, met my wife at the time. My goals were to enjoy playing sports and working out and being outdoors, and it shifted to being a dad. So I became the provider. So some of those things had to go. Had to focus on providing, putting a roof on my kids' head, making sure they had the car, phones and everything. So now, I have a similar goal. I want to provide for my kids for the future. So, whatever I have to do that is, what I'll do.
Let me ask you, talk about the day you released. What was it like to be released knowing you won't be going back? And was it tough saying goodbye?
It was tough saying goodbye to some of the guys who were in there. The day I got released, it was the last time for everything. The last time, I sat down and watched TV with my friend. The last time, I go to the defect. And we made sure that some of my close friends, we all went to breakfast together so we could sit for the last time and, talk about hopefully them beating me out here one day. Me being able to walk them out the gates and shake their hands when they get the touchdown and see their families. So that was pretty much the last day. It was an amazing day.
Now, speaking of the inmates inside, what type of programs did they have for the inmates in Leavenworth?
As far as what, like recreation or?
No, to better them in society when they come out, because
okay.
Like you said, just want to have the tools so once you do come out, you're able to to really blend back into society without having problems.
Yeah, I think they have a few really good programs, vocational training schools. The welding shop is Department of Labor certified welder. They have the barber shop, Department of Labor, actually Kansas City licensed barber. But some of the other shops, they're kind of outdated. So they have a purpose for Leavenworth for the DB, but they don't translate into civilian life. Textiles, sewing, there's not a whole lot of room for growth in the textiles market. Laundry, unless you're working in a big industrial complex where you're washing stuff, it's not a whole lot of opportunity for you to transition that into a lucrative civilian life. So I wish they would get some more updated programs, maybe an electrician program, maybe something with HVAC, because we have all that stuff there. We have AC units on top of our buildings that need to be serviced, and they have contracts with engineers who can easily be training at least us to maintain our own stuff. I think becoming more self-sufficient as individuals is something that the DB could do better. But the Department of Labor program is amazing, and the educational programs they offer are very, very good. Upper Iowa, Kansas City Community College, there are opportunities if you want to get educated to move forward.
Now, as we know, the fight isn't over.
Right.
The next step in the fight is to clear your name. You will not be in a fight. Well, I guess my question is, currently right now, your status, is that a dishonorable discharge?
It is dishonorable.
With that being said, how hopeful are you, because you're currently on the list for the pardon?
Mm-hmm.
How hopeful are you that you will get that call?
And
if that call is to happen,
mm-hmm.
will that completely stop the process as far as no more probation, no more dealing with the courts? Mm-hmm. You'll get an honorable discharge, and could that possibility open up to you to be able to do law enforcement at that point?
It could open an opportunity for me to do law enforcement. My conviction would be completely expunged. I think I would still carry my dishonorable discharge, which I wish it would change, just for the benefits, put my life on the line three times for the country. I would like to get, some of the medical care that, I worked hard for. But I am on the list, if you watch the news and stuff. at this point, anything's possible. I went from life 8 months ago, 9 months ago, to be at home sitting in my parents' room talking to you. So look at it in that spectrum, anything's possible.
Well, speaking on that, what's the toughest thing that you had to deal with in your life, and how did you overcome it?
Toughest thing I had to deal with in my life, I think the hardest situation for me is I was working as a carpenter. We were installing kitchens and baths, and I got laid off from my job, and I had been doing that for probably about 9 months. And at that point, I was the only income earner in our home. So I had to go home and tell my wife what happened, and hold her. She cried, and we both were trying to figure out where we were gonna make this up and how we were gonna make things work. That's the day that I decided I was going to join the military, and they were going to give us a bonus that would help us, pay some of our bills, and then get me trained so I could work in the National Guard and pursue a career. And it worked out up until the point where I got court-martialed.
No, I honestly got to say, I'm surprised on that question, to be honest.
Really?
I would think, I thought it would be Leavenworth.
No. The hardest day was watching my wife cry because I couldn't provide for her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was for me. That's one of my biggest missions. When I have a family to take care of, that is everything else is secondary. So I remember vividly watching her cry and having to hold her.
How important has God been in this process for you?
Been paramount. Paramount, top of the list. Just when hope is gone and you don't think that things can change, and you have so many people out there who have been praying for me over the years. My mom, her whole congregation at church, people writing me letters, just letting me know that they've informed their churches from Hawaii to, Alaska, some in Germany. Just that overwhelming support, and you can see, the fruits of everything that they, ask God for, sitting right here talking to you.
Talk about the lowest point in the process, and describe to my audience what you're feeling during that time.
The lowest point was probably when I got my first level appeals denied. So my wife and I at the time were very confident that with the issues that we had raised in the court-martial process, and the fact that when we asked for fingerprint analysis of the man that I killed to cross-reference with the pistol. If you grab my gun, his fingerprints would be on there, or there'd be another set of prints that were not mine. Guess they disposed of the body before they could do any DNA analysis, fingerprints, do a retinal scan to see if he was in the criminal database. All that was gone. And had we done something like that as a defense, it's a crime. If the government does it, it's, harmless error.
Speaking on the court process, mm-hmm. certain testimony had taken place. Mm-hmm. How did you feel when the testimony was reversed?
That was one of those moments where you realize that people that you assume or think that are your brothers, the people that you would even put your life on the line for, may not feel the same way you do. They're willing to compromise their morals to protect themselves when necessary, and that honestly, that broke my heart, because I'd spent months and years being with these guys, talking to them about their families, talking to them about mine, showing them pictures. We've been shot at, blown up together. What else can you experience? And then some stranger comes in, threatens one of your brothers, and asks you to lie. And your first instinct is to say, okay, what do you need me to say? It's one of those shockers that really opened my eyes.
How hurt were you in that process? Because one of the things they teach is, don't leave your brother behind. That's
one of the things that they teach. So I read the sworn statements that people gave of the account right after. People who weren't even there. People who weren't anywhere near where the shooting took place. And they were saying, oh yeah, he executed him. I believe that he just shot him just because. And when you cross-reference that was what happened at trial, we asked them, where were you when this happened? I was on the other side of the compound. So you really didn't see what happened? Oh, no, I was just telling you what I thought. Well, this is a sworn statement. This is you telling a prosecutor, someone who's trying to end my life essentially, all the information that he needs to move forward trial. And then when you read the transition from the actual people who were there, who said, yeah, there was a struggle and he shot him in the struggle, to, oh no, he just pulled the trigger and that was it. And you have to cross-reference and go back and show them their statements and ask them, what did you mean when you said there was a struggle? You know, that's pretty definitive. It's a struggle for a man's weapon and he fires his gun. How does it go from that to execution? So yeah, it hurts your trust with people. You know, your ability to let people in when people that you really truly thought were your family, were your friends, had turned their back on you.
Now, for those that don't know, prior to this situation and incident, you had no incidents on your record,
Right.
no blemishes.
Right.
Matter of fact, this was your second tour of volunteer duty,
Right.
third tour altogether, correct?
Right. That was my third deployment in 4 years. The second one that I volunteered for. I never had a negative counseling statement. Never had a reprimand. Never had a parking ticket. So for them to say that, you know, I'm a murderer and, you know, paint a picture of me as, you know, some kind of a monster, everything else doesn't match up with, you know, something that would cause somebody to become an immediate murderer. And it was like a couple of weeks from going home. If, you know, somebody was looking just to go execute somebody, you think they would pick a couple of weeks before they could fly home to see their kids, you know, for you know, it just didn't make any sense.
Now, I wanted to expand on that because with that being your second volunteer deployment, third overall, what kind of message did that send when you got life? And I can imagine that sent a negative vibe through the whole platoon, knowing that can happen. If that happened to you, I can't imagine what would happen to me.
Sure. And it wasn't just the platoon. It was even some cases that came after me. I had, you know, the ability to or the privilege to know some of the lawyers, and they would come and talk to me and say, look, man, we were going to fight the case that was coming up, but we saw what happened to you, and we had them take a deal. If you got life for what happened to you, then my client was screwed, essentially. I mean, we know he's going to get convicted, 98% conviction rate. But the fact that you got life, I told him to take a deal so you get the lowest numbers possible because they're going to try to knock your head off.
So with your case, you felt that, to the lawyers, they felt that must have been a precedent to them. They're like, hey, if this happens to somebody with no blemishes on his record, my client, I'm like,
right,
take
yeah,
the deal.
we go up there and they're going to, you know, paint him as, you know, the next Jeffrey Dahmer. So it's just, yeah, it's a scary situation for anybody who potentially is going to court-martial. Eddie Gallagher, for one, is, you know, pending court-martial. And, you know, if it goes there, I mean, 98%, man. What are you going to do?
Now, I got to ask you, how different is the world for you after being incarcerated for the last 8 years?
Very different. So I had, you know, this kind of feelings when I came back from deployments multiple times. When you come back, you know, when you're driving on the road, you're looking at potholes and trash bags and, you know, anything that can be a threat. So when I come back, I'm still observant. So you're watching everybody with their heads down, looking at cell phones, bumping into each other. You know, it's just really weird that people are so, you know, oblivious to their environment. They're just walking with their heads down. So it's just entertaining to watch, you know, trying to learn and see, you know, what's going on now.
How's the world changed for you since, you know, being in and being out now, like with new technologies over time?
Yeah.
Like what's new to you now that, like, oh wow.
Shoot, I mean, everything's changed. You got 4K TVs and, you know, shoot, they're gonna have folding phones here pretty soon. Yeah. everything's pretty much everything's changed.
Now, let me ask you, what advice did you give inmates who were in a similar situation like yourself, fighting for their innocence and freedom?
I told them, just whatever happens, don't stop fighting, because you're going to be the most passionate person about your freedom. Anybody else can just throw you on a desk and keep moving forward with their life, but for you, you're living it. I told them, don't give up, and I told them that if you look at me from going from life to home, it's possible. So just don't give up.
Now, one of the important things that you talked about the day that I saw you at the airport was getting a chance to hug your girls.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Now that you're home, what the relationship is like now that you're outside and they know that Daddy will not be back in there.
Yeah.
So what is the relationship like now?
It's great. I mean, we had a good close bond even over the phone, and now it's just gonna get stronger. So I text him all the time, and tell him I love him, and we're gonna start playing video games together, and just enjoying each other's company.
How important is communication with the outside world to inmates, and how tough is it for inmates who didn't have family or outside support?
No, communication is paramount. Like it's really the only thing that's consistent in your life, as far as what makes you happy. You can go to the DFAC and eat, and you might think the food was good, but then tomorrow it's going to be crap. You might have a good workout today, but there's a chance that you might not have a good one next time. But your family, the people who love you, are always dependent. Always dependable. They're who you look for when you're down, who you want to help get up when they fall down. So it's that relationship, and that only relationship, that you can really truly count on. And it's very important that you maintain that relationship, because that's who you have to go to when you leave. If you don't maintain that bond, and then you try to use their address for parole, hey, I haven't talked to you in 3 years. I don't even know who you are. Last thing I heard was you went away for this crime. So it's important to try to keep those lines of communication open, so that you could keep the bridge built and have a place to go when you get out.
Now, one of the groups involved in your case was the United American Patriots.
Yes.
Talk about them and their importance in your case.
Man, they're our saviors, really. Honestly, right after you're keeping your faith and your prayer, United American Patriots has been there every step of the way, helping provide for legal defense, helping bring my family down, to visit me, my mom, my kids, helping us just with our daily, everyday life, bringing our lawyers down there to update us on what new ideas they have, how they're going to fight for our case. So United American Patriots is a nonprofit, and I think everybody should go and do a little research and learn something about the United American Patriots, because they save us when we can't fight for ourselves anymore.
Now, when did they pick up in your case?
So
how many years in did they pick up?
I don't think it was years in. We had our court martial, and right after that they came in.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
immediately. Right.
Normally they try to get in before you have your court martial, so they can pay for that whole thing. But they have been every step of the way after that. They've been here.
How? I guess not the word disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess it can be that the mainstream media didn't pick up the story.
So they do. They might throw like a little bottom line in, and it'll come by real quick, and you kind of could see what's going on. What frustrates me is the fact that when I do an interview with the mainstream media, and I sit there for 10-15 minutes telling them about the other guys, John Hadley and Clint Lawrence, Bobby Bales, and I'll go through elements of their court martials and information that wasn't reported, and didn't paint the picture that they wanted about them being, good guys. They want them to be monsters, so it's more salacious. It's headline news, and I'll give them all the information, and then they cut that out. It's just sitting on the cutting room floor, and it's not about me. To me, it's not about me. It's about the other guys who are still locked up, trying to get them this opportunity, because.
Yeah, with this opportunity. Yes, talk
Sure.
about them and their situation.
Okay, I'll start with John Hadley. He's about 46 years old. Was a first sergeant in 101st Airborne. Almost 20 years. He did 19 and a half years. He's about to retire, and these charges come out of him killing unarmed terrorists, people that had been attacking his unit, and they were detained. And it got to the point where he was accused of killing and dumping the bodies in the river, right? 2 of his soldiers testified against him. We were offered immunity and privileges to testify against him. And they did a full investigation. They sent divers into the river where the bodies were supposed to have been. They found no bodies. There was nothing there. They went to the village and the families and asked them, what happened to your son? Where are your family members? The villagers said, my whole family is here. We're not missing anybody. But you continue to push a trial, a court martial, when the family tells you nobody died here.
Wow.
We got everybody. So, And now his crime partners have been released on parole for about 3 years now, and he's still sitting in prison. And reading his record of trial, it said that they have the same amount of culpability. I just don't understand how he's still a threat, but his crime partners are. Just love to see that guy get out and get a chance to be with his family. His parents are getting older, and there's enough issues with the court-martial process, with his trial, that you would think that they would give him another chance at freedom. If not, clear his name. So Robert Bales is another one. He was in a combat-related shooting where he went out into a village and killed a bunch of women and children. But his situation is a little more complex. So with him, he had a traumatic brain injury from being in multiple IED blasts, which obviously alters the way your mind works. He was on an anti-malaria medication called Primaquine. The military has a track record of when they issued that medication, they knew that altered your brain chemistry. They have soldiers who had gone home and committed active violence, killing some of their family members and committing suicide.
Is that similar to the Vietnam Agent Orange?
No, Agent Orange was something that they used in to the jungle. Yeah. This is like an anti-malaria actual medication pills that they were prescribing to soldiers.
I guess what I'm saying is, with that Agent Orange, was that something that with the chemicals altered the brain of a lot?
Right.
Because I know, like, when my father, he came back with the paranoid schizophrenia.
Right. So exactly, there are symptoms that come with taking that medication, and it changes the way you would ordinarily do things and think. So you couple that with the traumatic brain injury, and now you have an individual who's on 6th or 7th deployment, who's overseas, whose unit's being hit hard, and he's losing men. And the compound that he went to, they found weapons caches there. They found IED making material. They found sniper rifles. They detained people there. So when he leaves that night to go, fight, in his mind, it's not working correctly. He's going to kill the enemy. He's going in there to prevent his friends, his someone's son, someone's husband from being killed the next day. And if you look at it in that light, knowing that he went there, it doesn't make it right. He should be punished. But life without the possibility of parole for a man who volunteered to leave this country to do a job that nobody else wanted to do, to fight in a place that nobody else wanted to fight in, I think is excessive. And
to fight a group that doesn't have really a uniform.
Right.
There are times when I was reading a story one time where if they're shooting, they take their garment off, you can't shoot.
100%. If you and I were in the middle of a battle and we're fighting against these insurgents and we can clearly see the people that are shooting back at us, if he drops his weapon, walks into a house, and 2 minutes later walks out with nothing in his hands, we can't do anything to him. Even though we know that this guy is planning to attack us again. He attacked us already. That is one of the dumbest rules of engagement that I've ever seen. And it really comes from people who were sitting around a desk, at a round table, coming up with clever ways to try to, create this environment where we're gentlemen soldiers.
And how many of them have been in combat?
I couldn't tell you, but I can tell you that they don't go into combat now. So those individuals, you might get, they have counsel who are majors or colonels, and they have counsel who are captains, and they have counsels who are lieutenants. But the fact is that the people on the ground, the guys who are actually going through this, have a better understanding of what rules they need to follow and how to keep their friends safe versus somebody sitting around a round table who may not have been in combat in the last 15, 20 years. So it's just a system that it's not in favor of, the war fighters, the actual people on the ground, and then their Monday morning quarterback later when they, try to defend themselves or protect their friends or the interests of the country to the best of their ability in a situation that you can't game plan for. You can make a rough outline, but combat flows. I mean, it goes through lulls and highs, and there's stuff blowing up, and you didn't plan for this. You didn't plan for your truck to get blown up. That was part of your battle plan to fight. So when you have to shift like that left and right on the fly, you can't just give me these hard set rules that I have to go by in order to kill the enemy. So it's very frustrating.
Now, one of the things coming home is, getting back into society.
Yeah.
Have you been able to get job offers yet?
I have 3 job offers, but I can only take up on one. 2 of them are out of the state. But the one here is in Baltimore. for an electrician apprenticeship, and I'm very interested in doing that. I think there's a lot of room for growth, and you never be out of work.
Now, let me ask you about Senator Louis Gohmert. How instrumental was he in the process of your case?
He was like the lead. He went out there, went to Capitol Hill for my clemency, came back again for my parole, wrote, passionate letters, just willing to go out there and just say this is wrong. This needs to be changed. What this is going to do is cause soldiers to hesitate in combat. And when you do that, you lose people. And nobody wants to lose a son. Nobody wants to lose a daughter. And Louis Gohmert is an amazing person. I wrote him initially just asking him if he was willing to help, just say so. Or if he wasn't, just tell me up front so I can know I have to move forward. And he never, ever stopped fighting.
Now,
he was willing to drop anything to come and help.
Was that the only senator at the time that you heard back from?
No, it wasn't. So Congressman Louis Gohmert was instrumental. Elijah Cummings from right here in Maryland had wrote passionate letters. The Congressional Black Caucus, they were all interested in trying to find out what was going on in my case. Because if you look at some of the previous war-related shootings prior to me, they had all received clemency from the convening authority, which is, the command initially at your post has the authority to reduce your sentence based on, your past record and your service to the country and anything that they could see that possibly could warrant you getting a reduced sentence. I was the first one not to receive that. I was also the first black soldier to be court-martialed for a combat-related shooting. So they wanted to make sure that process was, fair and not being skewed by race. So they wrote, everybody signed it, a letter saying that they wanted to look into that. So also Jamie Raskin's office, also from Maryland, he was willing to come down to my clemency and parole hearing and write letters. And Bill Flores from Texas, another congressman who has supported other war crimes guys and is trying to help actively get them out too.
I gotta say, I really appreciate your time today, telling your story, letting others know about the other soldier stories out there who are going through similar situations. And what would you like to say to your supporters who's been with you through this whole process?
I'd just like to say thank you. You guys didn't have to take time out of your schedules. You could just kept on moving on with your life. And for you to, take time to write, to, go down to Capitol Hill, to call your congressman, that says more about you to me than anything about me. It says that they are, amazing, dedicated people who, love this country and love the soldiers who are willing to go fight. And no matter what the circumstances are, they will always, look after you. And they prayed and they supported, they rallied, and it paid off. And I just want to say thank you.
I really appreciate your time on Real
Thank
Talk
you.
with Zeb, telling your story and letting others know about the positivity that you have throughout this process, because I don't see any bitterness or negativity or anger. And like I said, I was very surprised when I asked that question about the toughest thing you've been through in life, because I really thought he was going to talk about Leavenworth, and I just tell you about your spirit of how you knew you were going to come home. So I really appreciate your time today. I want to thank your parents for welcoming me into their home. 3 years ago? I guess it was about 3 years ago.
This is your home too.
So, you should stay and eat.
Yeah. And I had a chance to write you, so that was good.
I really appreciate everything you've done. You've been one of the first people to step up and want to get the word out and try to stimulate some kind of reaction. Let people know that this could happen to your son or your daughter if they volunteer for the military. Just to kind of open eyes to what is really happening behind the Army commercial or the poster that you see or the recruiter standing in the mall. There's this whole story behind that very few people get to experience, and unfortunately, stuff like this happens.
One last question, because I just thinking about, like I said, stuff that my father went through.
Sure.
With the paranoid schizophrenia. Was there a high rate of suicide at Leavenworth?
Not in Leavenworth. So in my time there, I was there for 8 years, almost 9 years. We had 4 people 3 actually successfully committed suicide. We probably had more attempted suicides. You know, guys, you know, trying to jump off the rails or swallowing razor blades. So yeah, there were more than a few attempts. Chelsea Manning, I believe that she had tried to, you know, hang herself. So yeah, there's a lot of underlying mental issues that are kind of being, you know, painted over, just sort of so that you can, you know, check the box that people had treatment over medication. We had one of the medical professionals was whatever medication you wanted that was going to get you through the day, they give it to you. You have Percocets, you hurt? Okay, here's a prescription for 3 times a day. You know,
how important was you to keep your mind clear?
For me, I try not to take anything, you know, at all. I'm getting older now, so I take, you know, ibuprofen for my, you know, flam joints and stuff like that. But for the most part, I try to steer clear. I like to have a clear mind. I really don't like to drink very often. So for me, just keeping a clear mind and staying focused on my goals and trying to get home was more important to me than, you know, trying to get wrapped up in anything going on in there.
Once again, I really appreciate your time on Real Talk with Zeb. Again, Sergeant Derrick Miller. The next step, hopefully, we get that pardon this weekend. Celebrate.
Hopefully.
We're out. Got it.